Welcome to Conversations in a Vintage Shop, a podcast from behind my counter between customers. Join me while I sit behind my retail counter and just have a conversation with you, or with myself. While I look out the window, observe what I see, things that are happening in the store today, throughout the week, and just fun little stories that I have from my time as a business owner. This is something that you find interesting, then keep listening, and I appreciate you. Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us back for Season 2, Episode 2 of Conversations in a Vintage Shop. A podcast where I just have conversations in my shop that I have with all of you, my customers and friends that come in, where we just hang out and talk about whatever's on our mind. And today, we're doing something a little bit different, and it's a topic that I thought of throughout the holiday retail season. And anybody who works in any part of the service industry knows the holidays are brutal in terms of customers. It's a very high intensity industry throughout November and December, and tensions are high. People are cranky, and they also display behavior that may not be typical for what they would do throughout the entire year. So for today's episode, I'm going to be talking about unpopular opinions, and this is going to focus on unpopular opinions in the retail world. And I have a couple that I know are not going to be very popular, but those who work in the retail industry, especially those working in the garment industry, will understand exactly what I'm talking about. But I also put up a poll on both of our Instagrams, my shop Instagram, Conversations in a Vintage Shop. Actually, no, that is the podcast Instagram. Oh, you guys, I'm struggle bussing today. So if you go on Instagram, my shop at Carmine and Heworth Vintage, my podcast Instagram handle, Conversations in a Vintage Shop, I did a poll asking anybody who has or currently works in the retail industry, what are your unpopular opinions? So I'm really excited to talk about it and insert a few of my own. If this is a topic that mildly interests you, then please stick around. It's going to be a good one. All right, so I am going to go over all of the unpopular opinions that were sent in to me. And I had a lot of people asking, does it just have to pertain to fashion retail? And no. In my opinion, retail is retail. I can only speak... Well, for the majority of the time, I can only speak for the retail side of it. I did have a lot of food industry jobs when I was growing up, and maybe I'll get into that if there's time. Anyways, a lot of this pertains to retail. Now, the first one was someone who worked at Hallmark in our local mall. And anybody who's ever had a job in a mall, especially the one that we have here in Fargo, you know that during big holidays during the year, people can get very mean and very irrational. So this person wrote how crazy people get, especially when they do Christmas in July specials. And that makes me laugh because I know my mom is really into Christmas and July things. And if she's listening to this and doesn't think that's the case, it is, whether she remembers it or not. I've never worked at a retail setting where we've done Christmas in July, but at our local mall, I can definitely see that being a contentious time. Because here you think you get out of the holidays and you don't have to worry about people mistreating you or customers mistreating you. And then you do Christmas in July and it starts all over again. But she goes on to write that people go nuts for the ornaments and they cuss you out if you don't have them. And I've actually experienced this and have seen it happen myself. And I used to work, there was a kiosk in our local mall where we sold ornaments. And on those ornaments, we would have to personalize them. And we would write people's names on them. And there was a specific way you had to write it to make it look really cute and festive. And I really did like that job. I liked working at the kiosks. I got to see everything happening around me. And I had that job, I think, when I was a sophomore in high school, maybe a sophomore, junior. I can't remember. But I remember people would get so angry if you were out of a specific ornament. And I can imagine, especially even if you're working at Hallmark, there are some customers that seem to think us lowly, lower level employees have a great amount of say in the inventory that we have. And I would have people get mad at me and cuss me out and call me ridiculous for not having a certain snowman ornament. And I believe at Hallmark, because I remember one of the kiosks I worked at was actually very close to the Hallmark in our mall. So it's really funny that this question was asked. And how people get really offended if you're out of a certain style, as if nobody in this entire world would ever possibly buy that except for you. So it's an insult that you would never have it. And that kind of leads me into another unpopular opinion that I got sent in, which I don't believe is unpopular at all. I think anybody in any kind of service-based industry or just life in general. And here, let me pull up my phone. It keeps falling asleep. But empathy is nice. Customers that act out on workers must have some underlying issue. And that's just the thing. I feel like just in general, don't be a jerk to people. And don't be mean. For me, it's harder to be mean and bitchy to someone than it is just to be nice and laid back. Nothing is that serious, you know. If you're out of a certain ornament, the world's not going to end. Worst case is it doesn't arrive and you have to find another ornament. It's not that big of a deal. But especially during the holidays, and I've seen this, I worked at Victoria's Secret. I worked at this place called New York and Company. I've worked in many small businesses during the holidays, and the one thing always remains the same is there are some people, customers, that I think something about the holidays just brings out this innate need to act out and lash out on people in the service industry. And maybe it's because there's this thought that the customer is always right. Therefore, you can treat someone with disdain and anger and you feel like they can't fight back. So maybe it's a punching bag effect where you feel like you can get out all of your aggression on someone who can't fight back or stand up for themselves, which I'm happy to say, I feel like in this retail climate, and especially with social media and the way the world has progressed, that is changing. You can no longer treat employees or those in the service industry like crap because now they have the tools to call you out. And there are some businesses that highly, highly encourage their employees to stand up for themselves. And hey, if this customer is treating you like crap, I want you to tell me and we will take care of it. Now, a lot of corporate retail, they have a lot of policies against that because if you get hurt or get punched or something, they're liable. And that's a whole other beast within itself. But I know when I was working at a small business downtown, we were always empowered to stand up for ourselves. And if someone was making you uncomfortable, if they were yelling at you, obviously don't sit here and scream and yell back at them, but make it very clear that they're not supposed to treat you like that. And there's an article, and I haven't been able to find it, even to this day, because it was such a good article, and I'm disappointed I can't find it or even look it up anymore. But it was an article I read, I think it was about 10 years ago, when I was working in downtown Fargo, that the title was "Customers Are Not Always Right." And it was a really amazing article about you do not have to take the abuse that people lay out on you. And the customer is not always right. And reading that article, I was a manager at the time, and I sent it to all the employees that worked at this shop and told them, this is my stance. If people are coming in and being rude to you, no matter if it's the holidays or not, just in general, you do not have to take that. If they're going to treat you like that, then we don't want them as customers. I mean, because what kind of horrible human goes into a clothing store and, oh, you don't have this pair of sunglasses I want, so I'm going to sit here and berate you for 20 minutes about how this is the worst place I've ever been and blah, blah, blah. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I know a lot of my friends who work in retail, we have these stories, like tons of these stories. And in my opinion, I would be afraid to treat anybody like that because in this day and age, you can get proof. You can record people. You see that all the time on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and the whole Karen culture where you're getting called out. And is it worth it? Your 10, 15, 20 minutes of being a complete jerk, is that really worth it? Go to a therapist, punch a pillow, journal, I don't know, literally anything, but taking it out on some random person that is just out there living their life, trying to survive and doing their job. Those of us in the industry, you know what I'm talking about, and it gets really exhausting, and it's actually kind of exhausting to talk about. And this even relates back to when I worked in a restaurant. I worked at a restaurant in our local airport. I started, I think, when I was 15. They did violate a lot of labor laws. It's new ownership, so I can talk about this. But they violated a lot of labor laws. And when I was 15, I was working 40 plus hours a week. And I also did dishwashing there on the side. But it was one of those instances where, and this was when the movie Waiting came out. I don't know if anybody out there has seen the movie Waiting. And it's about the inner workings and relationships in a local restaurant. It almost looked like a TGI Fridays or Bennigan's or something like that. And this movie came out while I was working at this restaurant. And it was always one of those thoughts I had in my head that don't mess with people who work and are making your food. I saw the most disgusting things happen in that kitchen. And of course, at that age, I was 15. I saw cooks, if someone kept sending something back, I had never saw anybody spit in someone's food, and nor would I have served it. But I did see a cook eat off of someone's plate because they were sending things back too much or adding Tabasco sauce to their chili. Because I had one woman send her chili back, I kid you not, 6 times because she said it wasn't hot enough. And the cook had put it in the microwave for, I swear it was 5 minutes, and it was bubbling and boiling, and it still wasn't hot enough. So they put Tabasco sauce in her bowl. And again, at 15, I knew that was wrong. But mind you, at the time, I was working with people who were in their late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. I was a little thing, and I didn't have any courage to speak up. But it was a really good lesson that, hey, if you're at a restaurant, don't mess with the people who are touching your food. Because if you're going to be a jerk, a lot of times people who are in high pressure, stressful jobs with low pay and crappy tips, you kind of tip people a little bit and they're a little on the edge. So just don't be a jerk in any kind of service or retail industry. That leads me to another point that was messaged to me. And this one I go back and forth with. And it's Black Friday is not needed. And, well, I'll first go into, let's just get real with Black Friday. I think for a lot of people, you grow up and it's a ritual. You get up early the Friday after Thanksgiving. You wait in line. It's a ritual that families have, maybe a bonding experience, and just the thrill of it. And I've never been a part of any of that. I've never done any Black Friday shopping. I have worked Black Friday at many a business, but I have not ever shopped and partaken in the Black Friday buying madness. I mean, the fact of it is, the deals that they have on Black Friday are deals that they have the entire month of December. And you can get these things for way cheaper 2 weeks before the holidays. I know working at the numerous places I did at the mall, that's exactly what would happen. And it's completely unnecessary, especially for those of us who would always have to work on Black Friday or even come in on Thanksgiving. That hurts. So really, is it necessary? I don't feel like it is. And even in the small business world, I love Small Business Saturday because it's on Saturday. You get a chance to enjoy Thanksgiving if you partake in Thanksgiving. Or if you just are with your family on that day off. And then you can rest on Friday. Take an actual day off from work. I don't know. Have 2 days in a row of being able to relax. That seems to be very rare nowadays. And so I love Small Business Saturday. I've always, at any small business I've worked for, it's always been amazing. But Black Friday, I feel like, is a waste. And it's a corporate retail holiday. And I say holiday very loosely. So I do agree with that. I don't think Black Friday should be a thing anymore. Mainly because myself, my partner, and my family all have had to work and still have to work on Black Friday. My sister had to work at 5 a.m. the Black Friday after Thanksgiving, and she had to be there, I think, at 4 o'clock in the morning. So she couldn't even spend an entire holiday with her family or even my niece. So I agree with that one. And for some people, this is a very unpopular opinion. For a lot of us that work in retail, it's very popular. And I tend to lean towards that argument. All right, now I'm doing a really quick side note while I'm recording this episode. I listen to Pandora and I put on a lot of these stations. I don't pick what comes on these stations. I just pick the genre. And I love this amazing band called the Marias. So I've been listening to the Marias station all day. And it has been playing Amy Winehouse in very heavy rotation. And it breaks my heart because Julian's auction house of Los Angeles just did an auction with all of her personal effects. And her family had put all of her personal items up for auction to go to the Amy Winehouse Foundation. And I was stalking this auction like no one's business. And I had numerous items that I could have realistically bit the bullet on and perhaps have gotten a winning bid. However, I've become very cognizant of the fact that any money I put out is money that is taken away from my business. So I talked myself out of it. And I'm very devastated because they were selling makeup, body products, clothing, even the clothing that she wore during her very last performance and that had been made for her very last tour. There was even a dress in there by a clothing company that I was really obsessed with growing up and even to now. And it was pinup girl clothing, but this in particular was an offset of it called Deadly Dames. There was a Deadly Dames dress that I was really cool, or thought was really, really cool. But there's someone I follow on TikTok that ended up getting a lot of her makeup. And I've been really into collecting vintage makeup. And those were some items that I had really, really wanted to get. Not to use, of course, but just to purchase for my shop. And I didn't, because again, money. But hearing that song pop on, it was just something I had to ask. If anybody was watching that auction like a hawk like I was. I love Julian's auctions, even though I can never afford anything. I love watching it and seeing what everything goes for. But I digress. Let's get back into it. Now, one of the unpopular opinions I have comes from when I worked at Victoria's Secret. And for those of you who haven't listened to the previous podcast, sorry, my phone just went off, or who don't know, when I first started my shop, I needed a little extra money, just to keep the dream alive and to keep a regular paycheck coming in. And I had a job at Victoria's Secret where I predominantly did freight, but when it would get busy, I'd be moved up to the sales floor. And I've had this happen in multiple retail jobs. It's not just exclusive to Victoria's Secret. Now this pertains to the topic of underpants. And again, every time I just go back on the mic, my phone goes off. I could re-record this and edit it out, but then that would take away from the spontaneity of everything. But yes, underpants. And when I worked at Victoria's Secret, many of my coworkers made fun of me because I don't like the word panties. I don't know. It just makes me cringe. I honestly can't tell you why. Maybe it's all the 80s movies I watched where panties was such like a dirty word used by adolescent boys. I don't know. Underpants, panties, underwear, I don't care. Whatever you want to call it. And I am of the opinion that you should not be allowed to return underwear unless it came in packaging that you could easily tell if it had been ripped open or undone. I just don't think you should be allowed to return underwear. And I'll tell you why. Many times working at Victoria's Secret, I would get the job of processing returns in the morning. And you'd get a lot of bras, shirts, whatever, basic stuff. But then in the bin, whenever you saw one of the smaller little Victoria's Secret bags stapled together with this little yellow slip on it, you knew it was dirty underpants. And by dirty, I don't just mean someone had maybe tried it on once. I mean dirty. Like, yeah, it was crusty old panties, crusty old underpants. And no one should have to touch those. And it wasn't as bad for me when I would get them because whoever had initially done the return had prepackaged them, put them in this bag so I wouldn't have to touch them, which, hero. Not all heroes wear capes. But imagine you're working at the sales counter and you have someone come up doing a return and they hand you a pair of underwear and they say even it didn't fit, didn't work, and you get it and it's used and crusty. And you have to then try to look up the SKU if it doesn't have its tag on it. And if it does, or if it's not attached, you still have to touch and handle this. And if you dare ask the customer, have you worn these? No. Okay, well, it looks like you have. It's always been something that's bothered me. Anything that touches the nether regions that can get your juices on it. No. You shouldn't, no. No. Honestly, even if they have the tags still on them, no. I've never agreed with that. I've never liked it. And at Victoria's Secret, as with a lot of other corporate retail chains, when you get returns like that, you're supposed to cut them up and throw them in the garbage. Now, there was leniency with that, especially when the underwear was used. But still, it's disgusting, and it's one of those kind of demeaning things where it's almost like someone is just giving you their dirty laundry, literally, and they almost, I don't know, some customers I had, I swear they got their rocks off with it. They liked returning their dirty underwear. I don't know. It's like, just other people may get a kick out of it, but I'm just trying to work my low-paying retail job and survive and get through the day. So that's my unpopular opinion, number one. The next one is something that it bothers some people and it doesn't bother others. And this particularly bothers me a little bit more because of the nature of the merchandise I sell. And again, I am a vintage shop. A lot of the clothing I sell are decades old, and some are fragile. And this unpopular opinion right here is the reason why I don't carry a lot of pieces from the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And that is when people come in and like to play dress up. Now, I get it. You come into a shop or a boutique and it's like a candy store. It's the best closet in the world. And I understand the desire to try everything on, model things, whatnot. And for the most part, some people are really careful about it. It's only when I get some people, and this isn't the case with a lot of my regulars. This is more people who just come in kind of for the kick of it. Will come in and just try things on just because they want to see how it looks or how ridiculous it looks. And you try it on and you're not careful with it and it rips or it breaks. And 9 times out of 10, people just leave it in the dressing room or sneak it back on the rack. Very rarely do people come up to me and say, I'm so sorry, when I was trying this on, the seam gave out or a button came off, whatnot. A lot of times people just dash, as if I'm going to call the police on them for a button falling off, you know. But what really gets me are the people that come in and they look at things and they have like a huge stack of things to try on. Again, almost all of it vintage. And they go, well, I'm not going to buy anything. I know I'm not going to buy anything. I just want to try it on for fun. Now, what you're basically telling any retail associate is that I am going to make your job harder and make you use all of your attention on me, but I'm absolutely going to give you nothing back other than a heap of clothing on the floor of your dressing room that you have to clean up, and I'm going to leave here, and that's that. So that is my unpopular opinion, is when you get people coming in and just play dress up and have no intention of buying anything. They just do it for fun, but really you're making our lives a lot harder. And I've even had this happen in my shop where someone will go around and they may not overtly tell me that they're not going to buy anything, but sometimes, you've been working this business long enough, you can just tell. And you'll have someone just bring in a crap ton of things in the dressing room. They're trying all of it on, and midway through they come out asking what you think and your opinion, which I'm more than happy to give. And then they say, well, I'm not going to buy it anyways, just I really wanted to see how it would look. And I had it happen where I had a customer come in and they had just gotten paid that day and they were looking for a very specific garment. And that garment was in that dressing room with that person. And sometimes, you'll have customers ask if it's sold. Sometimes people are in a hurry, and this person was in a hurry and they saw it wasn't here and they were like, oh darn, and they left before I could even say, it's still here. And so that's also like a missed sale when you're just doing it for the hell of it. And, when I worked at the mall and it was clothing that, the clothing was crap anyways, I didn't have any, skin in the game. I didn't really care personally. I cared when I had to be in charge of the dressing rooms and had to clean it and organize it. But when it's a smaller business, it's a whole different ballgame. You have very limited products as it is, limited sizes, limited size runs. So if you have someone that's just in there hogging your dressing room, it really irks you. And I had another instance where it was a really busy Saturday and I have 2 dressing rooms and I monitor as best I can things that come in and out. And I had these 2 younger girls with their mom coming in here and they both, I kid you not, were in the dressing rooms for like 45 minutes just trying things on. And I thought, well, I have a feeling, I don't know, maybe they're going to buy something, maybe they're not. They're here with their mom. So I was of the thought, well, maybe their mom, she would tell them not to do that if they were just trying things on for fun and not planning on buying it. And I had a line, and I eventually had to say, hey, you know what, you guys, we have people waiting, so we need to, just be mindful of that. Jesus, my phone is going off like no one's business today. And at the end of that, they all left. They didn't buy anything. They trashed my dressing rooms, left tons of things on the floor, and just walked out. And then proceeded to tell me that, we weren't going to buy anything anyways. So you have a line of people waiting to get in who actually wanted to buy something and try stuff on. And it just clogs up the system. It clogs up the system. And to some, this may sound really nitpicky because, I love it when people try things on and feel great about themselves. And once in a while, if people want to try stuff on, it's not that big of a deal. But when you have people who take it to that whole other level where they are constantly going back and forth, dumping things on the floor, things get damaged, they, hog the dressing rooms from other customers who legitimately are trying things on to buy something, that's when I start to get really annoyed. So just keep that in mind when you go into a shop or a store. If you're going in, it's almost like people who are Sunday drivers. They're just driving around. They don't plan on going anywhere. They're just slowly putzing along the street while people behind them are late for work and trying to get to work. It's kind of the same feeling. Just be cognizant of that. I don't expect you to buy every single thing you try on, but please don't waste my time and the time of others who are patiently waiting for you to get on out. So that is one of my biggest unpopular opinions. And I know when I've talked to other people in retail, you have some people that just it doesn't bother them that much. And you have people like me who have worked in retail almost too long, and it just, your eye starts to twitch. You get that nervous sweat. You start getting really irritated right away. And a lot of times you can call it out right when someone walks in. You just know. Some people give off that aura. I can't explain it. Retail workers, do you know what I'm talking about? Like, you just know. But those are my unpopular opinions and some of the unpopular opinions of others. So what do you think? Do you have anything more to add? I know some people were a little hesitant to share it, and there were some that I can't say in polite conversation. There were some expletives that were used, and these were mainly coming from people who worked in big box retailers, corporate retailers, where their hands were tied with a lot of things. And I know how that goes. So some of those I'm not able to read, but they were very colorful language. But I appreciate the sentiment. So yes, if you have any more, you guys slide into my DMs. If you have opinions about anything that you want me to talk about, send me a message. Again, these are conversations that I have with you all when you come in, and that's the point. So if there are any other unpopular opinions about life in general, things that are happening here, there, everywhere, let me know. My DMs are open. Let me have it. I want to hear what you have to say. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to episode 2. Unpopular opinions. And this was fun. I like doing the shorter format. I am going to try really hard to keep the majority of these episodes fairly decently timed, since I know I personally don't have the attention span to listen to an hour-long podcast episode unless I'm on a road trip or going somewhere that's going to be taking me longer than 10 minutes, which is never the case because I only go from home to work most times, and that takes about 5 to 10 minutes. But I hope you guys got a kick out of this episode, and I like giving my opinions on retail and the service industry because I've worked many hats in those jobs, and boy, I tell ya, never a dull moment. Never a dull moment. But thank you again, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next week.